It's fine. Yeah. Deserve that one.
Give it till the end of the show. I'm sure I'll grow one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to figure it out next week. Who's next week?
Yeah, no, good to be back in the 011, and that was the reason for the shaving of the mustache. To be honest, it's acceptable in the Okavango Delta, but I thought in Joburg I might catch too many funny looks. But good to be back.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's fine. So
Right, there we
you
go.
drop
Then
in
we're
the
all
comments
good
and
now.
let us know that none of us like Steve. That would be great.
I'll mute you if you don't be careful. Right, all sorted now. Apparently, everybody can hear me, which is the main thing at the end of the day. If anybody else is muted, we can carry on. But you've got to hear the words of wisdom that I've got to spew. Right now, more to the point, people, is that we are sitting a week after we. I wouldn't say we were ever confident last week, but I think we all sort of sat there saying we can beat this All Black side. We had the players to beat the All Black side. It was going to have to take a good performance, and then it wasn't a particularly good performance in that first sort of 15 to 20 minutes. We didn't beat the All Blacks, and all of a sudden, it seems to be panic stations for a lot of people. Rion, I'll go to you first. It wasn't the game we wanted to see, but do we need to panic? How much do we need to read into it? Was it just one of those things where it wasn't our day?
We just played very badly. I think we went in. I don't know. We weren't awake arriving. We kicked off half an hour too early. The All Blacks just came out firing. They were very physical, which we know they would do, but they kicked it brilliantly. I think there's a bit of Joe Schmidt behind that. They had a very Irish kicking attack, and they just regathered their kicks. I think the stats were something like 53% of their kicks they regathered, and usually that's down at like 15 or 20%. So they were having a field day. Our backfield was nowhere, and they just gained field. They got penalties against us. We dropped off tackles. So there's a few things that are repeated issues, like the missing tackles, but then a few new things they sprung on us, like the kicking game. They just caught us totally unawares. And from there, when you're 17-0 down against the All Blacks in Auckland, it's a very tough ask to come back from that.
Yeah, no, listen, we've got a bad record in Auckland as it is, and we try to kind of downplay the fact that it wasn't Eden Park, so, it'll be a different thing. But yeah, the same sort of fan, same sort of area, and it's not going to be fun. I think what it does worry me a little bit how poor we were under the high ball, given the fact that we also like to deploy quite a good kicking game and usually have a reasonably good retention rate. And it was quite interesting, actually, and Wes, I'll go to you next, is that I was looking at 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, when we, or could it actually be a year ago, where we actually were targeting Geordie Barrett and Will Jordan under the high ball and getting a lot of success out of it. And almost a year later, or 2 years later, whatever it was, all of a sudden we've been absolutely nowhere. How do we fix that? Is it a player personnel point of view, or is it just one of those things that we kind of just need to fix it on the training ground?
Yeah, for me, it was a training ground issue. Like, if you looked, there wasn't one player who seemed to be particularly bad under the high ball. Actually, all our receivers under the high ball struggled at some point. They all just seemed to be out of position, not confident, weren't going up for it. So for me, that's more a training ground issue than a player personnel thing, personally, Steve.
Yeah, no, I think fair enough. As I said, it's if for a team that likes to kick so much, if it was a personal issue, and I think we'd have a lot to worry about. Speaking of personnel, Rees, a couple of rusty performances, a lot of the old faithful not really sort of coming good. Do you like maybe a Frank Ramosa, Damien Lendi, for example, Louis Diaga, even it's a bit to a certain degree. A lot of players who hadn't played rugby probably since about April, and it showed. Do you think it's one of those things we play them again next weekend and we'll really see a marked difference?
I think that some of those players that you mentioned certainly deserve another shot at it. I'm not going to jump to hyperbole and say that they should immediately be dropped. And a lot of times when we have our immediate reactions after the game. Some of the comments are, "Oh, you guys are jumping on this hype train," and so like, well, we're just exploring options. We have to have those conversations about whether guys have lost or earned the spot or whatever the case is. And so I'm sure we'll get deeper into it. But one standout for me and someone I really paid attention to in this game was Makazole, and unfortunately for him, he seemed a bit out of position quite a bit. The very first try, in fact, he was caught in between a rock and a hard place. He was trying to employ a rush defense on, which is something that we've done for a very long time since the last World Cup. But he just, his timing is a bit off. Everything seems a little rusty. And
Is that not maybe a like symptom of us not competing at the breakdown, because they had such quick ball?
It is.
Maybe that's,
and I
he
think
didn't have a chance to get in position.
Yeah, I think we're so used to competing and perhaps them other teams not getting that quick ball that we are able to employ that rush defense. Everyone's set up in that line. Everyone's ready to employ it. As soon as you've just gotten into the line and ball's already out, it becomes very hard to just get on the front foot and straight into that rush defense. And I think, as you say, Rion, thanks for mentioning it, that we were definitely caught on the back foot. So to answer your question, Steve, I think some guys should be worried. For me, I think Jasper Wiese, Bongi, perhaps again, may lose a starting spot, and a Damian Willemse would certainly warrant a change in position. Those are kind of the big ones for me at the moment.
Yeah, look, I think the Bongi Malcolm thing is an interesting one. It's so difficult because Malcolm's just so good off the bench and makes such a big impact. But now there's obviously the big talk about the fact, well, if he is one of the best players in the world, one of the best hooker in the world, can we really afford not to have him for 60 minutes, for example? I don't really know what the answer is, to be honest. For me, it's a lot of it kind of depends on the personnel with regards to, do you have fixtures at the end of the game and players you can sort of swing momentum and stuff. Jasper Wiese is an interesting one. Jasper Wiese is once again one of the top players in Europe domestically. Wasn't his best game, but I felt that he's a guy in the box jersey. He's taken a bit of time to get used to the systems, and he's sort of progressively getting a bit better. But how much pressure do you think he is on? Not so much just based on his performance of the last game, because as I said, form-wise, he's been one of the form players in the world. But do you think that Dwayne performance, against Australia suddenly sort of made people realize, well, actually, it's not all on Jasper Wiese. So Dwayne could still very much be our starting number 8. And, do you think that has a good or a bad effect on Wiese's, mentality, thinking that, well, he is either number 1-8 or now he's not the number 1-8? Because I think a year ago, most people were like, cool, he's the number 1-8. Now we're having to sort of have that conversation again.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, part of that can inspire you to go out and train harder and play better and just have that competitive mindset. And the other part kind of brings insecurity. As you said, am I starting? Am I not starting? So that can start to creep in. But what I really want to focus on there, Steve, is you said Jasper Wiese is, one of the form players in Europe, right? Where the rugby is a bit slower. And this is something that we commented on before the game. I think it's been a long time since the Boks have played that Southern Hemisphere pace. Now, I know Australia's down there, but the New Zealand, we know, are different levels. So, I think a lot of the guys playing up in Europe did get a bit of a rude awakening when the speed of the game was what it was. Because, the way the All Blacks came out firing in those first 15 minutes, it was quite beautiful. It was heartbreaking, but it was really lovely to watch from a rugby perspective.
Now, that's an interesting point. And I'll throw it back at you. We've got no... Well, I suppose we got Tonga, but generally, Ireland, Scotland in the World Cup, Northern Hemisphere sides. We're playing in the Northern Hemisphere in France, where I'm hoping it'll be quite warm and not too wet. On a selfish note, but probably not the same sort of conditions that
why,
you see.
Steve? Why?
You got to throw it out there. You might as well, But do you and how do we counteract? Do we go with a bit of sort of a horse for courses type thing? As you said, Jasper Wiese used to that sort of European style, it's a little bit slower. Do we need to look at other options if we play against, for example, the All Blacks in the quarterfinals? How do we adapt to that speed of play, or do we really kind of just hope conditions-wise in the Northern Hemisphere that it might be better suited to us and we kind of sort of nullify the pace of play?
The All Blacks are going to bring their pace wherever they go. They're not going to go, oh, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going to slow it down. So I hear what you're saying about the conditions. I think we just need to be able to adapt to what's on the field. We need to be able to pick it up when we need to pick it up and slow it down when we slow it down. And that's something I think we failed to do on Saturday. The All Blacks, again, controlled the pace of the game brilliantly. We were panicked and rushed, and we just couldn't quite collect ourselves. Hopefully a learning experience, but yeah, really looking for the boys to actually be able to be that World Cup defending side, take a breath and say, all right, let's control, let's slow it down if we need to slow it down, let's pick it up if we need to pick it up.
Right. Now, lots of negatives, some positives. We are on the bomb squad. I wouldn't say it almost works. I don't think we were ever really going to come back. But at one stage, the momentum certainly shifted. And for a good 20, 25 minutes, we were definitely the better side out there. Is that enough?
It was beautiful to see.
Yeah. Do we stick with the bomb squad concept? What do we do now?
I'm still... I don't know. Maybe if you're down 17-0, you pull that ripcord earlier. Maybe instead of a 40 minutes, you already start at a 30-minute thing. Just flip your substitutions around from a 60-20 to a 20-60. But you could definitely tell that when that second half started and the bomb squad came on, the power difference at the ruck especially was marked. We slowed their ball down immensely. Our defense was much better. We scored 3 tries. They only scored 2 in the second half. So I don't know. It's a very tough one. Like we say, the pace was a big issue at the start of the match, but we can slow it down. Why are we letting the All Blacks play that fast? Why are we throwing in quick balls to Jasper Visser's knees? And why are we not competing at the line-outs? Why are we not flooding the breakdown? There was so many breakdowns in the first 15 minutes where we just had the tackler in and maybe one guy trying to mess around, and then we fanned out. So there was definitely a change in our way of playing. And then all of a sudden, when Marks and those guys came on, we were going over the ball. We got penalized because we were playing the 9 when we've cleaned the ruck so well that there's no one else in front of us and we can't help but hit the 9, So I just think we can do it the way we usually do it with Bongi and those guys first, but we need to then play the way we need to, which is slow it down, like you say, control the pace, don't give them 2-second rucks, that kind of stuff, and then you can get you impose your game plan. We were trying to, I think, play as fast as New Zealand, which is always a trap. You can't fall into that.
You got to bring them down to your level.
Got to F them up physically. I mean, it's not hard, people. We've got the answer to all the questions.
We know how to beat them. We just did not do that. Why?
You nailed it on the head. It's like, well, we've got 2 options. We can bring them down to our level, or we can go up to theirs. And we did the exact opposite of what we should have done. And so, like you said, those quick balls and things, we were trying to play at their tempo for a little bit for 20 minutes until halftime came, and hopefully Jacques got in there and gave them a little push clap around the head and was like, "Hey, wake up, X," But
So I think the biggest thing was the lack there of adapting, and I think that was something that I was actually at the press conference today, and wasn't supposed to be Jacques, but he actually did eventually end up giving it. And he spoke about the fact that he said there were a couple of positives. He said, but he was the concern was how slow they were to adapt, and they need to be much more on it if they are to defend the title. They need to be able to adapt to the situation a lot quicker and a lot better. Let's talk a little bit sort of losers and winners maybe in the last maybe even 2 weeks, and kind of sort of talking about selection moving forward. And one of the things going to be interesting with this conversation is a lot of players are being there's a lot of talk about certain players that need to be binned.
I don't want to talk about this because there's a lot of Lions players that
we're catching a lot of heat, aren't you? Ex-Lions players. We have no issues, when we're back in the golden era. But one of those things also is quite interesting for me is combinations. I think we've seen quite a few different combinations in the last 2 weeks. Some of them have really worked. Some of them haven't worked. Some players have worked really badly with certain players, and then things have changed. For example, I thought Kwagga Smith had a pretty ordinary first sort of half an hour to 40 minutes. He didn't have much to do in the first half. Second half, they put on Dwayne PSA at the toy, and he became a whole different player. So if we talk about winners and losers over the last sort of few weeks, Rita, give me sort of maybe 4 players, let's try and find sort of between us 4 to 5 winners or players who have really sort of upped their stocks and are making themselves, I wouldn't say indispensable, but have really sort of put themselves in the mix.
Look, the calls are all in the comments. I mean, they are there is no consensus on any position at the moment. If you are to ask a Springbok fan, a week ago we had interesting debates. It was quite fascinating. Some guys were saying, well, we already had to talk about Bakazoli and Arendse coming in, and I think that to me that is the forefront in everyone's minds as the front runner of who's losing and who's winning. And I think if there was a race going on, I think Arendse's edged ahead quite substantially there, and it doesn't look like he's going to slow down anytime soon. Willie, certainly a winner at this point. I think there can be no question about it. Whether you like him, hate him, the man is contributing on and off the field in substantial ways. His composure is a big thing, especially in a game like that against the All Blacks, where he's just calm, he gets things together. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to rally that back three, who were a bit all over the place. It was a very concerning penalty kick. Penalty, and then a little cross kick there by I think it was Bowden or Geordie, one of the two, put it in the corner there. And the whole back three was just nowhere. Lucania was nowhere.
Yeah, I think that was just after, and I think that was actually, I want to touch on that a little bit, just after we had made the substitution and Lucania had shifted to the wing. And it's amazing how that small sort of shift, positionally, everybody was nowhere. And that is a big warning for us regarding the 6-2 split, when people do need to sort of change their positions a bit. But yeah, continue.
Other than that, I think that I've got no opinion about Dielendi and Lucania at this point. I think that they are looking a bit slow, maybe a little sluggish, but I'm not worried about the combination per se. I think that they just need to get a bit of match sharpness back, and I think they'll be fine. The Mani Pollard one is still up for debate for me, obviously, because, well, Pollard hasn't been playing. I think the answer is quite obvious to everyone that this is not Damien's position. And I think if you ask Jacques Ninoba tomorrow and he was being honest with you after a few brandies, he'd probably say the same thing. But he's so versatile. He's got so many options anywhere else. At scrum half, it's an interesting one. I didn't mind Faf. I didn't mind it, but it wasn't spectacular. But then again, no one was on the day. So again, still up in the air for me.
When last did you see Faf kick that few box kicks? I don't even remember many of those.
I hope someone's finally got in his ear about that, which is great and fantastic. If we're talking in the front, I think Bongi is probably the big loser over the last 2 weeks, just because it hasn't looked a bit out of form. And then, of course, Jasper and possibly even Mostert. Mostert was nowhere. I honestly didn't even notice him playing at times. It was just... And that's often the way he operates, in the shadows a little bit. But you can usually tell at the end of it, the man's run his feet off 20 tackles odd, but it seemed like he just wasn't quite there. So that's kind of my winners and losers. I don't know how much everyone else may agree with that. I don't know if Jasper's a big loser. I think that he's maybe also just competing at this point.
I think for me, what stands out a lot about that is that we're talking about certain players not playing well. I think the reason we're focusing on a lot of them is because they're the alternatives are playing well. Jasper didn't have a great game. A week after, Dwayne had a great game. Bongi's been struggling the last sort of 2 weeks. Malcolm Marx comes off last week and looks as good as ever. Mapimpi maybe a little bit slow and not at his best, and Arendse in the form he is at the moment. So it's interesting. Same with Franco Mostert. I think Peter Steph Toy for me has looked a lot better in the last 2 weeks. He's looked a bit fitter and quicker around the park. Which is good to see. I think that at the end of the day, how much do you think our 23 at the moment might be changing? I think if we look at the 23 that we fielded over the weekend, Khaleesi comes back in, Oxenchair comes back in. By the way, people, Oxenchair is back in camp. We did get an update today. He's not going to be available. They reckon it's about another 4 weeks until he can play. So looking at sort of that, probably from a time perspective, maybe that New Zealand game. But he is back in camp and continuing with his rehab there. But you've got a Pollard, Oxenchair, Sia Khaleesi, who at the moment aren't available due to injury, and they will all come into the 23, arguably into the starting 15, all of them. How much about 23? Because we all kind of know what our 23 is, really. Maybe on the bench we're not sure. Do we go with Archia and a Franco Mostert plus a number 8? Is it Dwayne or is it Jasper, whatever? But are there any sort of additions to the 23 that you think are potentially changing based on the last 2 weeks? Something like an Andre Esterhuizen, for example. Do you think he's on the cards, or do you think they're still going, no, he's still not going to make it unless he doesn't play?
Yeah, I think you've got to keep the door open because you never know what's going to happen. You know, we've got injuries, but we're talking about if everyone's healthy and it's purely a performance-based thing.
Yeah.
I think the door has to stay open a little bit, which again, you've got to juggle it really carefully as a coach because you want the guys to feel like they have to compete for that spot, but at the same time, you want them to feel secure in that spot. So, I mean, Aneste's had a lovely performance, arguably against not a fantastic Australian side.
I don't think it's that argument, to be honest.
A good performance nonetheless.
They're pretty dreadful. Last week, I think as well. They should have gotten one out of that game. But anyway, not to take away from Aneste's performance, but Australia were dreadful.
No, fair enough. I'll get the diplomatic side out of me. So but it's just one game, and we need to see that in and out. Like as Reece said earlier, he's not worried about Damien Delendi, even though he's looking a bit sluggish and slow, and maybe not fantastic. But we know that O can put in the work, and we've seen him do it before. So just looking to get those guys back into form. So for me, not massive changes, but the door is open.
And now we've got 4 games. We've got one more rugby championship game, and I suppose for me the nice thing, and this is a bit of a silver lining, Jacques. Look, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he spoke today about the fact that they had a plan, and they told everybody the plan at the first alignment camp in February with regards to who's going to play where and what kind of teams they'll play. They always come and run off the rhetoric that every single time they pick a team that they believe can beat the other side, which I think they do. But there's no doubt that they went and said Australia, we can beat Australia with a lot of second stringers. We could probably beat Argentina next week at home with some second stringers players. So now the question is, the rugby championship is all but gone. We're relying on an Australian side, which are now 0-2.
Come on, Eddie.
To pull it out the fire, which would be a very interesting to do, to be fair, to go on 2 losses and then come out and beat the All Blacks. But let's say right now that the rugby championship is kind of gone. It kind of gives a bit of license, I suppose, if you do want to go and say, right, well, now we've seen, Lecania, I'm struggling a little bit. We probably wanted to see Jesse Creel against Argentina, but maybe we need to give Lecania more minutes. And, Malcolm Marx is looking really good. Bongi is struggling. We were going to maybe we're going to give him the week off against Argentina and give Dwebo a go, but all of a sudden we're thinking, well, maybe Bongi needs more minutes. Rian, do you think that, the last 2 weeks have change the plan slightly, given the fact that we might have a little bit of license? Because if we had beaten the All Blacks, you kind of go full strength next week because you said they're saying let's not take the chance we can win a trophy, and we're not going to sacrifice that.
I want them to go full strength this coming week, mostly because I'm going to be at Ellis Park and I don't want to watch a full team. The tickets are not cheap. No, I want them to start thinking about, okay, we need to nail down this 23. We've given the others bunch of guys chance to build cohesion. So when we're playing Romania or Tonga, those guys know each other. But I want our 23 to start playing and getting minutes and putting in performances. I'm a bit sick of the chopping and changing. I'm hoping there's a full strength one this week, and then is it the week after, or is there a break before they go to Argentina?
I think it is the week after. It's the week after, because it is the week. So it's next week, then it's the 5th, because we announced our World Cup squad on the 8th, and they're back here by then.
Yeah, so I'm thinking they'll probably send a more second string side to Argentina to split that travel fatigue a bit between the two sides. But I would from now on like to see maybe a proper 23 with only 1 or 2 changes, not the 5 or 6 changes that we've had. So the guys, my back 3 is Pieter Steph du Toit, what's his name, Dwayne Vermeulen, and then Albert Quagga if he's fit, or Kolisa if he's fit. And then maybe you can put Eskom Van Staden in there. So that those guys can start getting cohesion. The Islander and seems still off the pace. Give him game time so that he can start getting cohesion with the Islander, because they haven't played together for months and months and months. So that's my wish, is start putting that main 23 of yours out and get them battle hardened. And then there's going to be time in the World Cup to rest them using your other side.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I think especially, the Argentina trip is not a fun trip. It's not a fun travel. It's not a fun place to play. It's an aggressive place to play. I think it's Argentina's last game.
I think we'll lose that game probably.
And I actually wouldn't mind if we do, to be honest. I think it's one of those people underestimate. Look, I mean, it's easy to say now. It's really tough to play against Argentina, but I mean, New Zealand hammered them there. But Argentina already looked so much better last week. I mean, they looked better in the second half of the first game. So we know that they're that they struggle. But I think that game against Argentina is, for me, a really nice game for the players who are maybe not even going to go to the World Cup, to get that last opportunity to play in a Springbok structure and say, right, if there's an injury, you're ready to come in. So, but there's also players for me who I kind of had going to the World Cup in my mind who have not featured yet. JC Creel, who was in the press conference today. Shane, such a nice guy. I always hate going to a press conference, and he's such a normal lacquer oak, and everybody just slates him online. It's like, guys, but he's so nice. Like, but anyway, so he hasn't played yet. Trevor Nyakane, 2 years ago, I thought that he was arguably within our top 3 best props. He hasn't featured yet.
He carried the Bulls to that final in the URC.
Yeah, and then you remember during the British and Irish Lions, that he came on a couple of times. He was winning scrum penalty. The famous photos of him with his tongue out and stuff like that. He hammered that British and Irish Lions scrum.
Yeah,
he hasn't featured yet. So there's a couple of players who, as I said, I sort of had in my mind, they're probably definitely going into the World Cup, and yet we haven't really seen them. So. Yeah, I mean,
we'll probably see them on Tuesday then. Hey.
Well, yes, I said Tuesday. I mean, for me, if we don't see Trevor or JC in the 23, then for me it'll be a bit of a red flag. So that's it. And unless they're not going to go to the World Cup, which again I'd be surprised about, it's a bit worrying that they haven't had any game time as of yet. But I mean, Reece, do you think that those 2 players in particular? I mean, as I said, I had them as hands down they're going to the World Cup. Do you think I'm wrong?
I'd like to throw Deon Fourie in the mix here. To be
yes, I'd actually. Deon Fourie is an interesting one as well.
But yeah, let's. The Jesse one's interesting for me. I'm not a fan, unfortunately. But unfortunately,
no, man, he's good.
Boo! Boo!
Who are you comparing him to? Lucanio like the best 13 in the world on form.
Well, and to be fair, at the moment the comparisons are starting to bridge a gap a little bit because Lucanio's not been the Lucanio we know, but yes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, look, I take bad Lucanio over Jesse kind of every day. But also at this point, we're too close to a World Cup, and if you were to give me options, I'd say, well, it's too late now. I would take JC. So there is a little concern around that. Deon Fourie as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I actually would have liked to see him against the All Blacks. I think that would have been the kind of game that suited him. Fast-paced, bullish. In your confrontational,
slowing down rucks. Yeah,
that's kind of his game. He's there to cause a nuisance of himself and disrupt a game plan. Whether he goes or not now it's hard to say. We've just got so many options in the VCs. It's almost too late now. And who was the last one again? Who we say then? Trevor.
Yes.
Again, another thing that there's just too much competition going on there.
And yet there's no Oxen Chair, and we still haven't seen them.
There's no Oxen Chair, and which is also concerning, which makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes. The man's a World Cup winner. He's tried and proven, and there must be another reason that we're not seeing. So let's not jump to conclusions about it. There's obviously a system issue, perhaps, or something in the scrums that's just not clicking. And just personal preference, unfortunately. Obviously he was Matt Proudfoot's kind of baby back in the day when he was around, and perhaps now we've got different personnel, different tastes, and unfortunately he's maybe fallen on the wrong side of that.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, I think, for me, it's just very odd. The Deon
We'll
Fourie
probably
thing.
see them this coming week, eh?
I think you have to. Yeah, and I think Deon Fourie will. What I think is interesting is I think a lot of people last year were suddenly sort of saying, well, and it's true, every single training session, every single captain's run, Deon Fourie throws balls for the line out. He practiced. A lot of people all of a sudden were saying, well, maybe, we don't take 3 hookers, we take 2 hookers, and we take Deon Fourie as a hooker option. Which I don't really back. I think that hookers have such a specialist position that to play somebody there who hasn't played there in 4 or 5 years is a suicide, given how we do need to rotate. I also think the fact that Bongi has not played as well as we would have liked in the last 2 weeks probably also means that needs to be put on the back burner. But we do have 2 additional spots in the squad than what we had last World Cup. Because it's got a 33-man squad, not a 31-man squad. So it'll be interesting to see how we use those extra spots, because for me the standard thing will be, well, that's an extra backline player, that's an extra forward. But my sort of heart also says that I think, given the Springbok coaching staff, that I reckon they'll be licking their lips and thinking, well, that's 2 extra forwards we could potentially take.
Yeah.
I mean, John Plain's coming to the mix. They might go, oh, you can add an extra lock, and they can go, well, Dion Fourie can be a utility forward, so we can add another extra forward, and that obviously, do you add an additional prop? It's for me, it's gonna be interesting. And Wes, in terms of those 2 extra spots, do you think also, for example, Pollard not playing any rugby until until August at least? We don't know when. Khaleesi coming back from injury as well. We don't know when he'll play his rugby. Do you think that's also maybe not throwing a bit of spanner in the works to even Oxenchair, for example? Do you think that's throwing a spanner in the works to that sort of makeup of that squad, and thinking, well, we need to take an extra fly half. Maybe we need to take an extra, flank cover, for example. Yes, if Khaleesi goes down in the first game, you can withdraw him and bring somebody else up. But from a systems point of view and being there, being around the team, I suppose you do kind of need contingencies. Or do you literally just say, no, we're going to back them. If he gets injured, we can fly somebody else up, and we kind of back our lineman camps to know that if we fly up Dion Fourie or Marco van Staan, he'll be able to slot in immediately and we don't have to worry.
Shit. That's a good question. It's a tough one. I think as funny as it sounds, you've also got to think about the guys who might not even see any time on the field, but actually just bring such a good energy to the training grounds. The fact that Khaleesi hasn't been playing, but he's at least there with the guys at the moment, bringing that chaos. And so you also got to look at it that combination side of things. So who can we have in the squad that, yes, is a viable option 100%? If we need them, they can go on and perform, but is also bringing stuff off the field as well. Is also sort of bringing that chaos, bringing that energy to the training ground, pushing the guys harder as well. You need to have those good apples in that squad as well. So I know that doesn't answer your question at all, but hopefully I've said enough words that, we're happy with what I've said and we can move on to the next one. Because it is a tough one, that one.
Like that's sad, trying to reach the word count there when you get to the end of an essay. You're just like,
pick me, coach. I'll be the guy.
Therefore, I do.
Yeah.
I personally love to have a chat about this New Zealand team, while we still can, because honestly,
please.
No, it's true. Honestly, I mean, I love watching them play rugby.
Come on, guys! A year ago, Foster was supposed to be sacked. We were calling them the worst New Zealand team of the modern era. We were saying that there were no chances for the World Cup. Now 2 games against a terrible Argentinian side and a Japan-based undercooked box side, and now they're the Messiah. And come on, don't come here with this.
No, they've got Joe Schmidt and Jason Ryan. Jason Ryan, I think he's going to be able to name his price. I think some big French team would love that guy to come coach them.
It actually worried me how quickly that pack got better last year when they added to the mix. Yeah. Like the next game, they were like, "Oh no, we can play rugby again." You're like, "How?"
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think, okay, so if we don't have to talk about New Zealand directly, I'll talk about them indirectly.
No, we can talk about them, because I want to talk about the Mwanga, Geordie Barrett, Bowden Barrett axis, and how it is just, I don't know how you actually counter it, to be honest.
Richie Mwanga is the best 10 in the world. I don't care what anyone says.
Wow.
Ooh.
First of all, he is. As long as you take out Finn Russell, and if Johnny Sexton is still bad,
Owen Farrell,
and if Romain Intermac is it's like surfing or something.
Joke.
And
it's an absolute joke that this is even a conversation.
Sorry.
That man has been behind Rolls Royce packs his whole life. As soon as the pack gets stopped, he's useless.
Every fly off in the wall when they're behind a bad pack topples.
Yeah, but that excuse doesn't work for Alton Yankees. That excuse doesn't work for Damian Willems. So last year, the forwards were useless for New Zealand, and Richie Mwanga got benched. Now they're good. Look at what Damian McKenzie did against Argentina behind that pack.
Second best.
Nonsense.
No, he did.
He's the best Super Rugby fly-off ever. We'll say that.
Oh, my goodness.
The current Super Rugby fly-half.
Okay, well, but he
was phenomenal last weekend. I'll give you that. I was very impressed. He last weekend I think showed, and it's interesting, isn't it? When you have these like stand-up performances, you always look 9 times out of 10. A fly half has had an amazing game. Every single time Scotland has beaten a pretty big opposition, had a big upset, chance off Finn Russell's had an absolute worldie. for example.
Yeah.
So I thought that Richie Mwanga last week showed us what we were kind of missing. Again, behind a very good pack, but I mean, he was flawless off the tee. Just didn't make any mistakes. It's just when you watch a world-class fly half just go through the motions and not make any mistakes, it's amazing how easy the game becomes for just everybody else.
Yeah. And special mention as well for Will Jordan and of course the Barrett brothers. But Will Jordan was phenomenal. He was really, really good. I enjoyed watching him. And I mean, Wes and I were watching highlights just now, and we could not believe how he got away with that try. He fell over, got up, and somehow ran around 3 Springboks.
There was a little bit of blocking from Ioane there. If you go look at that ruck again, I think it's Vili that tackles Jordan, and then Mapimpi is supposed to come in and make a ruck.
I still don't know if it was.
Sorry. Are you trying to suggest that there was off the ball play by an All Black side, which created space for their wings to go through?
You can take that video and you can put it over Lucanio Am doing the exact same thing as well.
I just want to be clear. I saw something in the group chat about we shouldn't be blaming the ref, but it sounds like me, like you're actually.
No.
Are you going after the ref, Rian? Are you going after? Because,
no, it's not the ref's fault. It's clever play from Ioane to move the ruck guys out of the way. It was just brilliant play. That's all.
Okay. All
if
right.
the ref doesn't get it, it's not cheating. It's only cheating.
Yeah, true.
I caught slander in the comments for even mentioning the ref at all.
No, come on, guys. You all know the rule about the refs. Everybody was very happy with the 2 weeks ago. Nobody was happy with it last week. I do think that Kwaka was robbed a very cool rip, but apart from that, I mean, yeah, we were just generally dreadful. But yeah, look, I think the All Blacks are back. I do think it's safe to say. I mean, I don't know if they'll go all the way, but they're certainly going to go into the World Cup, which I always said they're always favorites. Doesn't matter what they're playing like. They are going as favorites. An interesting one that I want to talk about, and actually I want to go completely left field here, because we were talking about fly halves. Sexton's been banned for 3 games, and that's causing a lot of talk on the various socials. Wes, harsh, fair, not harsh enough?
I think, look, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? So if you want to go and do something stupid like, what he did with the ref in terms of the intimidation, or just like make him feel really uncomfortable, because I read the reports and everything, then you should get sanctioned appropriately. I think it's fair enough. I don't think it needed to be any harsher. I think you need to make an example. It doesn't matter who is committing the infringements or whatever. The same rule should be applied. But I'm glad it's been applied to such a big name, so we can see for other players that this doesn't stand. It's not okay. I've often said on the field that I'm sick and tired of players going to the ref and complaining. I mean, this is even worse after a game that you didn't even play in. You're doing. I mean, a player of that seniority, that experience, surely you can wait to the day after and maybe call up the Oak and say, hey, can we discuss, or even a phone call. I don't know, but like there to wait after the game and just
don't even do it on
that
TV.
sort of
Shut at him in the tunnel.
Presence.
Yeah, flat duck of paper. The guy's going back to load shedding. He's going through enough as it is. Like, leave him alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. For me, you wouldn't be surprised if it was from like an inexperienced, really passionate young startup 10 or whatever the case is. But yeah, someone with that much experience.
But that's an interesting point, because people have been saying for quite a few years, to be fair, and this is, I think we've actually talked about it on the show before, how certain captains can get away with speaking to refs a certain way. Sexton does it very well. Alwyn Jones was the master of it. Bigger as well. They've got that kind of rapport with the refs where they kind of push the line. And Sexton's always been that one that's very happy to say to chirp a ref, well, what about that decision? Are you sure you're not going to check that and stuff like that? So I think he's always kind of had that in him, but he's always, I think, had such a good rapport with the refs that he's never sort of been punished. What for me is interesting is the fact, obviously, his previous good record factors into the fact that he didn't get a particularly long ban, which is funny given the fact that so many people are saying, well, it's about bloody time he's gotten sanctioned. But Rian, fair, not fair. Reese, what do we think?
Not strict enough.
There you go.
The whole thing about rugby, we always like to tell ourselves, is this is not soccer. You don't see a rugby player shouting in a ref's face, And if you want to stop things like, what was it in Italy where that ref had a chair thrown at his family in the airport? leaving a game or some stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, we are not nowhere near that, but these are the little steps you take. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual thing. You need to stamp it out. They did it to Rassie. They gave him a good long ban. And I'm sure if this happened the next year, the year after the World Cup, and there's no big tournament coming up, it would have been a 6-week ban, no problem. But because it's the World Cup, it's one of the number one players in the world, in the number one team in the world. If this was a Fijian or a Georgian, do you think their hearing would have been 2 months late? The hearing would have
taken like 4 days from the beginning of the hearing to actually come to a conclusion.
Yeah,
on a Thursday, you got the answer on a Monday.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That's it's Johnny Sexton. He's one of the biggest players in the world, but this is not how you protect a ref. This is gonna lead to more issues. Just like everyone says, Rassie opened the Pandora's box. This is one of the little things coming out of the box now, and it hasn't been handled strictly enough. I don't think.
Rian, I'm glad you mentioned the Rassie thing because I've been dying to talk about it. It's just,
So moving on.
I understand that the length of Rassie's infringements was quite, long, the leaked video or whatever it was. But the point is like, he wasn't going out there and bashing a ref to his face. And in a sense, if it wasn't Jaco Pep and he wasn't South African and involved in rugby, you'd probably be pretty scared. You got to irk like that in your face, like chasing you down pretty much, and unrelentingly going after you. And although I don't know what exactly he said, I can imagine there were a couple of not so choice words.
Sorry, sir. I think you might have gotten that wrong. It's probably not what he was saying.
But I don't want to debate the severity of the two things. But I want to say is they went after ref. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And the minimum sanction should be much higher.
I think he got left off a little easier for the same reasons Rian said. But
yeah, look, they were never going to keep Sexton out of the World Cup, were they? I mean, that's the story of him leading Ireland to their first World Cup in his swan song World Cup, and you're gonna ruin it for something as arbitrary as abusing a South African ref. Come on, we want justice for Jaco. Although having said that, when I read Jaco's sort of his what he said,
his testimony or whatever.
I kind of felt he undersold it a bit. Like when you see some of the footage and stuff like that, he never sort of mentioned anything that he basically he stayed completely clear away from what Johnny actually said. And let's be honest, when someone's swearing at you, you know what they're saying to you, and stuff like that. So for me, it was quite a little bit of. I was expecting it to be a lot clearer from paper on exactly what was going on. He then did this, and that's how we felt. I suppose I thought it was a little bit ambiguous, which maybe sort of played into that as well. That he maybe wasn't, sort of as harsh as his assessment of the situation as maybe it could have been.
Potentially, maybe he was a bit worried about getting sort of more flack, or if he really went after it full fierce, and then I don't know. But
I think it's the other way. I think he's a South African and he's got tough skin, and he's like, I don't really care too much about this, and I'm not going to make it a big deal.
I grew up reffing club matches in the country where we try to stab me afterwards. This is child's play.
I wanted to ask: Has Sexton made a statement afterwards, sort of about the ban, or even an apology to Jaco, or nothing? He's just kept quiet.
I heard something about his parties, or it's been an apology that's been communicated, but I know that, for example, he has not gone, "Hi, Jaco, I just wanted to say my bad, sorry, dude." I know that hasn't happened. Apparently, there was
at least not publicly. Maybe offline.
Yeah, and again, publicly, I would have expected.
He doesn't even have to pay the fine. Leinster's paying the fine.
Yeah, because shame, they really can't afford it.
Yes, no, but again, guys, I think I would have expected a player of sort of that notoriety, that seniority, to have made a statement, a Twitter, Jesus, how old am I? A tweet, sort of saying, like, this is not acceptable. The way I acted was out of line. Sincerely apologize for that. May any discomfort he feels, and wish him all the best. Done. Doesn't even have to mean it, but just so again, back to
I don't think he would mean it, to be honest. I think he's quite. I think he's quite happy with what he said, to be honest.
Yeah, no, but I don't know. It's just that for me. Then
he's
I'm
so old. He probably doesn't have the passwords for his phone anymore.
Yeah,
he definitely doesn't have Twitter.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to make a Twitter.
Well, to be fair, I think. Wes, I don't know if you're on Twitter, Wes, but I think we need to get you on Twitter so you can upskill you a bit there. Interesting times. Now we're sitting what we are. I can actually it's today. The reason that our announcement sort of went out that we are going to the World Cup is because it starts in basically 50 days, which is pretty cool. 50 days time, we will be having New Zealand versus France in the World Cup opener. Lots to sort of get through going into the World Cup, but I just want to sort of spend sort of the last 10 minutes talking a little bit about your tier 2 nations. Jacques was asked, the guy he was basically asked, do you think you'll get out of your pool in the World Cup? And Jacques said, and I didn't quite know what the guy expected him to say. He said, well, if I didn't believe we could, then yesterday we should have fired me a long time ago. But he did acknowledge we've got a very tough pool. If you guys have seen the Fiji versus Tongan lineups for this weekend, these tier 2 nations are here to play this year. And I like throwing Georgia, who have beaten a couple of the tier 1 nations in the past few years. Do you think that this is going to be the most competitive World Cup ever?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Consensus. Thanks, guys. Good show.
Yeah, there you go. Good show.
You guys are wrong.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Reese, will go to you first. I mean, how all of a sudden has that going to change the perspective where it's not just about a team that's got a good. I mean, it's the old story, and we talked about that during Chasing the Sun. It wasn't a 23-man effort; it was a 31-man effort. All the dirt trackers, the players preparing. But let's be honest, the 2019 World Cup, when you play against Namibia, you go and play anybody you don't want to play, and they roll them over 60-0. Back in the day, you'd play against Tongan side, you would literally say, right, well, we're not going to play any of our good players because we know we'll win, but they might get battered. Now,
correct. Yeah.
It was literally a case of we're protecting our best players. You guys,
Brian Lima's going to fold you in half.
Yeah,
because we're going to win the game by 50 points.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about winning the game, but JC, you just cannon fodder. Go win us the game and get hammered on the way. But now you play against that Tongan side. You can't take them lightly because there are going to be upsets in this World Cup.
I'm in two minds about this, Steve. I'm really happy that all these rules have been repealed and allowing, like especially the Pacific nations, to now return to their roots, so to speak, for the guys who are on the outs, because obviously New Zealand's just so full of talent that a lot of the guys have 2-3 careers at the All Blacks and then fall away, and are still have some use to somebody else. But I do worry that let's not hype them up too much, because whether they are able to change an entire structure just by their presence, I'm not entirely sure about. You've got a guy like Izzy Folau, for instance. What a talent, but is he going to be, he's not the coach. He's not the youth system. He's not all of these other things that come into play, to throw a bit of football into the mix because it's the most relatable to me. It's like, well, you can chuck a Ronaldo into an Al Nassr side or a Beckham into an Inter Miami team and then have them play against Real Madrid, and you'll very quickly see that there's still a massive difference. So a couple of players don't carry a team. I do hope it shows them improvement, and I think that this will, as you said, be much more competitive this time around. But until those structures change, it's really doesn't matter too much, I think. So great for the game, but I don't expect to see massive changes in the standings from this World Cup.
We're not putting money on Fiji to win the World Cup.
I'm sure
Might get out
is.
the group.
Yeah, we'll chat to Chris to see what the value is. Go check out the Boyle odds. Rion, maybe sort of long term, obviously short term, we're now seeing players kind of sort of jump ship because they can and get themselves into a World Cup. Do you think that this rule will now, two things? Do you think this rule now will allow players to commit to maybe, well, let's call a spade a spade. The Pacific players, your Tongans, your Fijians, your Samoans, they all grow up wanting to play for the All Blacks. It's called spade a spade. None of them, if they're really good, sit there going, I cannot wait to represent, Samoa in the World Cup because I'm not going to win a game. If I go and play in New Zealand, I can win World Cups and trophies and stuff. Does this help them want to play for their nations, or do you think this is almost now a bit of a safety net where it's like, well, I can gun to play in the All Blacks, and if I don't quite make it, if I get a couple of caps and I don't quite make it, I can see long term not going to be able to make it, I can go and play in France, I can go earn some bank, and then what's it, 5 years or whatever, or 4 years, I can then just go back and play for Tonga or Fiji and stuff like that. Do you think it's going to be a help or a hindrance?
Oof, that's a lot of variables to plan for that in your life, to be like, oh, I'm going to try and get 2 caps for the All Blacks. The first thing is we are kind of speaking from ignorance. I'm pretty sure half the guys, or most of the guys in that Tonga side, are born and bred New Zealanders. They just have a mom or dad or a grandfather or whatever that's Tongan or Fijian. I mean, Adam Coleman plays for Tonga now. That guy is as Australian as it comes, He's just got family that's Tongan. So it's going to be a lot more on an individual basis. I was listening to Jean Klein as well. When he was in Ireland and he was picked for Ireland, he thought, yes, I am an Irishman now. This is my team, blah, blah, blah. And then he fell out, and he told mates of his like a month ago that I think my international career is over. And then Rassie phoned him 2 days later, So I don't think these guys can really count or bank on that happening. I think most of the ones we're talking about are actually New Zealanders. They want to play for New Zealand. They just happen to have the right parentage to be able to play for the other countries. It might help because Tonga and Samoa are tiny. Those are countries with less than 1 million people. Fiji is half the size of New Zealand population-wise.
Geographically, by the way, people, by the way, in terms of physical size of people, quite the opposite. But yes,
there's like over 1 million Fijians on the island, so it might help them keep talent. They might be able to say, okay, you go to New Zealand, you make the team there, you get dropped there, but if you play in Super Rugby, you can still play for Fiji after 3 years. They can start putting rules like that in to try and keep guys at home instead of having to give up people to go to France or whatever, and they don't get used there. But I don't think it's going to change that much. It's still going to be a very rare occurrence, I think, where a guy gets dropped because it's always New Zealand, if we're honest, and then 3 years later, 4 years later, they're going to be playing for Tonga or Samoa. I don't think it's going to be such a huge influx of players like that. It's just now because it's the first bunch, but I think it will change. It won't change much more than this.
I mean, let's not forget that the rule works the other way as well. I mean, you can have an absolute superstar come out of Samoa, drop out because he gets a call from New Zealand,
You can play in New Zealand for 3 years, and then, well, it wouldn't be New Zealand because they have the talent, but maybe like that Tongan guy has like, I don't know, Dutch parents or something, and you go play for the Netherlands or something.
No. It's also a nice sort of like it's a nice like sort of carrot sort of dangle. If you play really really well, you can represent Tonga, and you get to then play against some ex All Blacks who are going to come join us as well a couple of years down the line. You could play against. So you see this guy that's playing now, he might get dropped. You might have the chance to play with him in 4 or 5 years time. It is interesting. What's also interesting is the fact that we actually voted against it. SA Rugby, we said nah, we're not about that life. And then when they said, well, shame, we went, okay, cool, well then we're gonna jump people anyway. But it is an interesting thing, and as I said, I'll be very interested to see how long term the fact that they can also, bank on, some New Zealand players, some Australian players potentially making the switch to sort of bit of a stopgap. But I think at the end of the day, I suppose, and we sort of spoke a little bit about it, the youth structures need to come into place, and the rugby structures need to get a lot better. Speaking of youth structures and rugby structures, just before we end, we have an under-20 championship happening next year, 2024. The Baby Boks, Shane, can we just talk about the fact that our poor junior Springboks were absolutely berated the entire tournament and ended up finishing third?
Berated by you?
No, I've always said to them, I was like, Shane, dude, there were some nice players there. No, I was defending my boys.
I've rated the field they were playing on.
Correct.
That it was in the Cape again.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, bring it to Johannesburg. Bring it to Gauteng. But how big is this for first of all for SA Rugby, for Southern Hemisphere Rugby in itself? When we saw the gulf in quality between, that France and Irish side, it's like chalk and cheese. But how important is the step? And more to the point, so how long do you think it'll take before this is gonna really sort of help? Because at the end of the day, it's one of those things that you always think, well, it'll take time, but we're talking about age group rugby. We're talking about in 2 years' time, it's a brand new bunch of people who wouldn't have even been affected by the previous decision. So I suppose it's something which you can capitalize on as early as next year, isn't it? Extra 3 games and extra 3 games, and we've got such a good youth structure and school structure that we always say that we've got the players. So do you think this could be quite an instant reward type of decision?
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's excellent. It always felt like there was that gap. You kind of fell between high school, and if you didn't necessarily make the box straight out of high school, maybe some, Curry Cup or Super Rugby even, there were just these guys who floating. But no, it was always awesome. I lived in the UK for a while, and when the Six Nations would come on, it was great to actually watch. They sort of showed the under 26 nations happening almost at the same time. That was phenomenal to see, and I think, yeah, just the more game time for the boys, the better, and just develop those oaks further and give them that opportunity. I think it's a fantastic decision.
Yeah, I think and as I say, I think what we actually saw even now is how much better the kids got from their first game to the last game, and I'll finish up with Rion because I can see I know how excited you are about it. Do you think we could finally start
Coaching as well?
Coaching or poaching?
Yeah, it'll be good to get coaches coaching under 20s more
Yeah.
often as well.
Yeah.
Because
We need that.
Bafana and Clerco was absolutely hammered this year when we started playing badly.
Yeah.
But I mean, last year they went over the season and they were brilliant. I think also the problem with age group rugby is you do have good years and you will have bad years.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you look at some of the past junior box sides and they're absolutely mental. Ironically, though, if you look at some of the sides that actually did better, player by player, they might not have had, those players might not have gone on to have the careers that we sort of expected them to do, but as a team as well, managed to put together. But yeah, I mean, how much do you think that this is going to change? And I think also what's quite interesting is the fact that we talk about a coaching pathway. Bafana Nteko spends the entire year and he gets 5 or 6 games maybe in the World Under-20, and that's his entire year. How important is it now that these coaches can actually work with teams for a pretty extended period of time?
It'll be great. It'll help things because we've now got the Varsity Cup, and you've actually got coaches becoming famous in the Varsity Cup. You've got Curry Cup. You've got coaches being developed there, and this is just another good pathway where guys in the Varsity Cup or guys coming through in Curry Cup teams have another opportunity to maybe become an assistant coach with Bafana, and through that pressure cooker of playing against New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, they become better as well. It's not just the boys playing. It is another opportunity for a coach to put in structures, spend time with people, and become better. And that's another big thing I think will be good about this. It's not always just about beating the Northern Hemisphere teams. It's about developing our structures as well. I'm very happy with it. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think for me, I always feel we're far too results driven when it comes to this under-20 side. I mean, cool, fantastic. You've won 5 under-20 trophies. Does that really matter if it doesn't translate to trophies in the senior thing? And I mean, it's we were all there once. You play for the under-14s, you win a game, nobody cares. You win a game in the first team, everybody cares. At the end of the day. So yeah, I think that is something as well, a bit of a mentality shift. We're a very proud nation, but I mean, when I watched the games, for me it was more sort of. I mean, I watched under-20 championship. I 100% watch it to sit there going, right, who my future box here. How they play together, cool, make it entertaining, but I'm looking there going, right, where's my superstar? Who's coming through here? Where's the next Andre Pond? Where's that next age group star? So yeah, I do think that if we start to take a more sort of development outlook about it and develop coaches and structures and players and systems, and not just that as well, I mean, it's everything. I mean, it's your background staff, it's your physios, it's your your strength and conditioning people. It's all about building the pipeline. So. Yeah, I think it's going to be very cool. But chaps, time flies when you're talking ruggers. And to summarize, we have decided that Johnny Sexton got a far too likely and he's a disgrace. Fiji and Tonga are going all the distance in the World Cup. The Boks are in a complete crisis and we just need to give up. What have we missed out?
New Zealand are winning.
New Zealand
are winning. New Zealand are back. Also, Richie Morgan can only play behind a good pack, and is not even the best number 10 in the New Zealand squad.
Wow. Ridiculous.
D-Mac, bring up the D-Mac train, dude.
Yeah, lots of mention to Australia and Argentina as well this week. But hot take there, Steve, from your end?
Oh yeah, that was such a good game.
We have another fan forum coming up next week before the next round, so we must give that some attention.
Yeah, we'll talk about Argentina quite a lot because I love guys. I mean, Argentina, aren't they? They're just such a cool team to watch. But They did their best to try and throw that game away, to be fair. But there's some proper Argentina players coming through.
They're going to be even better at Ellis Park. They're going to have good players back.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that they're missing quite a few players.
I miss the Jaguars. Let me just say that. Oh, it was so good to watch them play.
Yeah, except that they'd come down to Ellis Park and just drill us because we're playing against the Argentinian national side and used to hack me. It was just like, could we just not? Because back at the time, the Lions had like one international player and they had like one player who wasn't internationally capped. And then Australia rubbish.
Excellent. Australia rubbish. Unlucky. Good stuff, Eddie.
Yeah, we'll talk about Australia a little bit next week because he's announced a very interesting training squad.
Where's Pete Salmo?
Yeah, he's dropped Pete Salmo. He's dropped Tom Wright. He started him twice in a row at fullback and then said, "Cool, I'm my squad."
Yeah.
Eddie. I don't know what Eddie's doing. Also, very good British and Irish Lions tour coming up as well. There's actually a lot we could have spoken about tonight. But
the ridiculous New Zealand Australia game at the end of the tour. What the hell is that?
The Anzac game. That's wild.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
I hope we can get a few of our guys in there as well. Just a few token number 8s or something.
Yeah.
Careful with the words there, yeah.
we won't go that way. But I mean, the nice thing about them is that I suppose you can call up a real 10 in Quay Cooper, so you don't have to use Richie Mo'unga in that Anzac game.
Yeah.
All right, I'm hanging up now.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We will chat again next week. And anybody else there in terms of some catching up? There was a squad update yesterday from the Bok camps. You can go check that out. Today there's also a press conference from Jacques Nielbus, so he talked a little bit about some of the injuries and stuff like that. And if you missed the announcement, we are going to France. And more about
yay! Thanks, Stevie, for taking us.
Everyone here, all 4 of us.
We'll tell the community, we start getting some more super chats in, a couple of members, then maybe we can do a virtual show where you guys. I'll give you guys a green screen and we can virtually put you in France. But yeah, people, thank you very much. We will see you guys next week. And Rian's going to go home and start practicing his push-ups so he's ready for the Ellis Park brawl. And we will. And Wes is going to go back and start not shaving again so that we can have the moustache back.
Yeah.
It was also I'm going to let Chris know that he's up for next week on the Mo train. Everybody else watching, smash the like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We will not be live this weekend for any rugby because there is no rugby really, unless they do find a stream for the Tonga's Fijian game. But we will be live for Formula 1 throughout the weekend. All starts tomorrow, so join it. Mark and Reese there, and we'll see you guys all very soon.